In September 2014, a small group of hunters was exploring a remote, densely wooded area located roughly 19 miles from their hometown. As they moved carefully through the thick forest, they made an unsettling discovery. Hidden deep within a cluster of dense bushes, partially obscured by heavy foliage, lay an unusually placed large bucket. Intrigued, yet wary, the hunters decided to investigate further. As he looked inside, a sense of dread immediately overcame him. To his shock and horror, he realized that the bucket contained gruesome and horrifying evidence. The chilling contents left the group deeply shaken, prompting them to immediately contact the authorities for assistance. Law enforcement officers responded promptly, quickly securing and preserving the scene for a thorough investigation. Specialists meticulously recovered the evidence and transported them for detailed forensic examination. After extensive analysis, including comparisons with dental records, forensic experts conclusively identified the victim as Holly Bobo. Dear viewers, please don't forget to like, leave a comment under the video, and subscribe to the channel so as not to miss new videos. This is very important to us. In this documentary, we will explore the true crime story of Holly Lynn Bobo, who was born on October 12, 1990, in a quaint, serene American town named Darden, Tennessee. This charming place, nestled in the heart of Tennessee's countryside, had a tranquil atmosphere and was home to just a few hundred residents who cherished their close-knit community and slow-paced lifestyle. Surrounded by lush forests, picturesque hills, and winding creeks, Darden felt like an idyllic haven, far removed from the hustle and bustle of bigger cities. Holly grew up in this peaceful setting with her parents and her older brother, who shared her appreciation for nature and the great outdoors. The Bobo family deeply valued their time together, regularly embarking on family adventures, whether it was hiking through shaded trails, fishing in crystal-clear streams, or cooling off in local creeks on hot summer days. Their family bond was strong, built upon shared experiences and mutual support. Beyond her love of nature, Holly had a passion for music, especially singing. Her melodious voice often resonated during local church services, bringing joy and comfort to the congregation. Friends and family admired her kindness, warmth, and talent, predicting that she would accomplish wonderful things in life. Following her graduation from high school, Holly was determined to pursue a meaningful and impactful career in healthcare. Her compassionate nature guided her toward nursing, and she enrolled at the University of Tennessee's campus in a neighboring town to fulfill her dreams. By 2011, at the age of 20, Holly was deeply engaged in her academic pursuits, dedicating herself fully to becoming a nurse who could make a difference in people's lives. Balancing academics, family life, and friendships, Holly also maintained a loving relationship with her high school sweetheart. Their bond had grown stronger over the years, and the young couple eagerly discussed their future, imagining a life filled with happiness and shared accomplishments. Though independent-minded, Holly chose to continue living with her parents during her university years, largely because the university campus was conveniently close, just a short drive away. Moreover, their family home carried significant emotional value, as Holly's father had painstakingly built the house himself. Each room, every corner, held precious memories for Holly, making the prospect of moving out unnecessary and even undesirable. On the early morning of April 13, Holly awoke around 4:30 a.m., diligently preparing herself for the day ahead at the university. After a quiet breakfast and a few minutes spent reviewing her notes, she felt ready for class. Shortly thereafter, her parents departed for their workplaces, leaving Holly at home with her brother, who was still fast asleep. At approximately 7:30 a.m., Holly received a phone call from her boyfriend. He planned to go hunting that day on a large piece of property owned by Holly's grandmother and wanted to make sure that her family wouldn't mind. Holly reassured him, and they chatted pleasantly for a few more minutes. With classes approaching, Holly informed him that she'd soon be leaving for the university. Moments after the phone call ended, a nearby neighbor was stepping out of his home, about to start his day, when a sudden, piercing scream shattered the calm of the morning. Alarmed and immediately concerned that something was terribly wrong, he quickly informed his mother about what he'd heard, and she wasted no time in calling Holly's mother. Holly's mother, already at work, instantly felt a pang of anxiety and attempted to reach her daughter by phone. As the calls went unanswered, her fear grew stronger, prompting her to rush back home to check on Holly in person. Inside the Bobo household, Holly's brother remained unaware of the disturbance until the family dog began barking uncontrollably from the backyard. Stirred by the unusual noise, he looked out of his window, initially unsure of what to expect. From his viewpoint, he saw Holly standing in the garage, accompanied by an unfamiliar man dressed in full camouflage attire. Initially, he mistook the man for Holly's boyfriend, as he knew about his earlier plans to go hunting and recalled that he often wore similar clothing. Although Holly's brother couldn't clearly hear their conversation due to the distance, he sensed something wasn't quite right from his sister's tense and worried demeanor. Concerned but still uncertain, he decided to call their mother to clarify if Holly had changed her plans for the day or if she had invited her boyfriend over unexpectedly. However, his mother, frantic with worry, quickly interrupted him and shouted urgently that the man was definitely not Holly's boyfriend. Then, in an alarming and shocking moment, she instructed him to grab a firearm. Initially stunned by his mother's unexpected directive, Holly's brother asked for clarification, to which his mother urgently replied, "Yes," before abruptly hanging up. With growing fear and apprehension, Holly's brother turned back to look outside. His heart sank as he saw Holly walking towards the dense woods bordering their property, the mysterious man gripping her hand firmly. A chilling realization hit him as he noticed the man was significantly taller and broader than Holly's boyfriend. Suddenly realizing the gravity of the situation, he desperately attempted to call Holly and her boyfriend, but neither answered his frantic calls. Meanwhile, Holly's mother had already contacted the police. Although the emergency call was mistakenly routed to the neighboring county's authorities due to her location at work. As Holly disappeared into the wooded area, her brother urgently informed his mother of the dire situation before grabbing his weapon and rushing outside to help his sister. Tragically, Holly and the mysterious intruder had vanished from sight, leaving only ominous signs of struggle behind. Upon entering the garage, Holly's brother discovered alarming splatters of blood scattered on the ground, a stark indication of the serious danger she was in. Immediately recognizing the urgency, he called the police again, clearly expressing the severity of the incident and the urgency of their response. Law enforcement arrived swiftly, though the precious moments lost had already allowed Holly's abductor to disappear without a trace. Holly's brother explained to the officers everything he had witnessed, providing details about the stranger's camouflage attire, large build, and the man was also wearing a cap so he couldn't get a clear look at his face. Still, he distinctly remembered that the man had long, dark hair reaching all the way down his back, something quite distinctive and unusual for their small, rural town. He also clearly recalled that while he couldn't make out exactly what Holly and the mysterious man were discussing, he could discern that the stranger had a deep, resonant voice, one that seemed calm and authoritative. It gave him an uneasy feeling, heightening his concern even further. When the police arrived, they found the entire situation peculiar and difficult to understand, given the quiet nature of their community. However, they were initially hesitant to launch a thorough investigation, seemingly paralyzed by confusion and indecision. The local police department, being a small-town unit, had minimal experience dealing with such alarming circumstances. They lacked clear protocols or specialized training to manage a case of potential abduction, leading them to uncertainty about how to handle those crucial first hours. Surprisingly, they didn't take immediate action to search the dense woods around the Bobo family home, nor did they properly secure the residence or the garage, despite the disturbing signs they encountered. Alarmingly, officers didn't even promptly speak with neighbors who might have witnessed crucial details. By the time Holly's parents returned home, their anxiety quickly turned to desperation and frustration upon discovering that little real effort was being exerted by authorities to locate their daughter. Only after persistent and impassioned pleas from Holly's distraught family did officers reluctantly begin coordinating a comprehensive search of the wooded areas around their home. They eventually questioned neighbors and invited forensic teams to meticulously examine the blood evidence found in the garage. Crucially, authorities also took steps to conclusively rule out Holly's boyfriend as the perpetrator, It was already clear from Holly's brother's observations that the mysterious man differed significantly from her boyfriend in stature and appearance, and police soon verified through reliable witnesses that her boyfriend had indeed been hunting elsewhere at the precise time of Holly's disappearance. Despite the delayed response, the thorough search of the surrounding forest unfortunately yielded no immediate clues or physical evidence related to Holly's whereabouts. Hoping to make headway, investigators then urgently requested Holly's cell phone GPS data from her provider. The data revealed a troubling and perplexing sequence of movements. Holly's phone traveled northward for approximately 30 minutes before abruptly turning around and heading back toward her family's property. Ultimately, the last known signal originated from a dense wooded location just a short distance from her home. When authorities raced to investigate that specific area, they located Holly's phone, abandoned and deliberately tampered with. The SIM card had been carefully removed, preventing any further tracking. The discovery intensified the search effort, prompting investigators and local volunteers to comb through the area meticulously over several exhausting days. Unfortunately, their tireless efforts provided no additional clues or leads. However, a peculiar phenomenon soon emerged in the community. Residents around town began mysteriously discovering personal items belonging unmistakably to Holly, scattered randomly across public spaces. The first item was Holly's lunch container, inexplicably found abandoned on a street. Then someone uncovered a discarded receipt bearing her name. Shortly thereafter, another resident stumbled upon Holly's university identification card. This unsettling series of discoveries greatly perplexed the community and baffled investigators. Police debated whether Holly herself, in distress, might be leaving these items behind as some desperate plea for help or as markers for potential rescuers. Alternatively, they theorized that the individual responsible for Holly's disappearance was deliberately planting these items as part of a twisted psychological strategy, possibly to confuse authorities or generate fear among residents. With no substantial breakthroughs in locating Holly, police investigators eventually turned their attention toward known individuals with criminal histories residing in the vicinity. Their suspicions quickly focused on a man named Terry, a local resident known to authorities due to multiple previous assault charges. Investigators were startled when they discovered a disturbing pattern. All of Terry's prior victims bore striking resemblances to Holly, specifically in their youthful ages and physical appearance. Terry's physical stature also matched the description provided by Holly's brother, raising immediate suspicion. Driven by these compelling similarities, investigators secured a warrant to thoroughly search Terry's residence and property. However, despite extensive searches, no concrete evidence was discovered linking him directly to Holly's disappearance. Undeterred, authorities subsequently implemented a wiretap operation on Terry's phone, closely monitoring his calls and interactions for several weeks, hoping desperately for a revealing slip or admission. However, these efforts also disappointingly failed to produce any tangible connection to Holly. Authorities persisted, methodically expanding their inquiries to include additional potential suspects and systematically broadening their search radius. Each passing week saw increased volunteer participation from local residents, all driven by collective determination and concern. Unfortunately, even with such unprecedented community involvement, all search operations frustratingly led nowhere. Months passed with minimal progress, eventually prompting police to discontinue ground search operations. They shifted their primary investigative efforts solely towards interrogating suspects, examining alibis, and reviewing extensive case files. Despite sustained efforts, however, these strategies offered no new clarity or breakthroughs in Holly's heartbreaking case. Holly's family, deeply distressed and emotionally shattered, remained trapped in agonizing uncertainty. They felt immense anguish not knowing where Holly might be, her condition, or even if she was still alive. Their grief was compounded by mounting frustration with local authorities, believing fervently that the initial, inadequate response from the police had critically diminished chances of finding Holly safely. The family's consistent demands for increased investigative rigor sadly fell short of generating meaningful progress. For nearly 3 long, agonizing years, Holly's tragic disappearance remained unresolved, leaving her community haunted by unanswered questions and painful uncertainty. But in March of 2014, an unexpected and pivotal development occurred. Local authorities arrested a man named Dylan, well known to the police for prior offenses related to illegal substances and possessing unlawful weapons. While being interrogated about unrelated charges, Dylan suddenly and shockingly confessed he possessed crucial information, stating emphatically that he had seen Holly after she had been abducted. According to Dylan's startling account, on the very day of Holly's disappearance, he had traveled to his brother Zach's home to pick up his car. When Dylan arrived at his brother Zach's residence to retrieve the vehicle, he immediately sensed something was gravely wrong. Upon entering the home, he stepped into a scene that would forever haunt him. Standing in the living room, he saw several familiar faces: his brother Zach, another acquaintance, and shockingly, Holly herself. Holly was seated rigidly in an old wooden chair, her posture tense, her eyes wide with unmistakable fear. Dylan later vividly described her frightened expression to investigators, recalling the palpable distress. As Dylan absorbed the shocking scene, his brother Zach allegedly broke the tense silence, casually and chillingly revealing to Dylan that he had kidnapped Holly earlier that morning. Dylan claimed Zach further admitted to having assaulted Holly in unspeakable ways and disturbingly confessed he had recorded the assault on video. Horrified and disoriented by the sudden revelation, Dylan insisted that he did not participate in these atrocious acts. He maintained to authorities that, although he witnessed Holly alive after her abduction, he played absolutely no role in her subsequent murder. He adamantly emphasized his innocence, asserting that his involvement never went beyond the horrific moment of discovering Holly. Dylan also mentioned with chilling specificity that Holly had tragically lost her life shortly after the kidnapping took place, though he vehemently denied witnessing or aiding in her death. He repeatedly emphasized his lack of knowledge about the exact circumstances of her murder, highlighting his confusion and fear at the time. This explanation initially seemed plausible to investigators, but they remained skeptical, continuously pressing for further information. The police investigation took another unexpected twist shortly thereafter. Detectives promptly brought in Zach for questioning, but he firmly denied Dylan's account, maintaining a defiant stance throughout the interrogation. Another strange twist emerged when Jason, their mutual friend, was interrogated by authorities. He recounted going to Zach's home on the day of Holly's disappearance, stating he intended only to purchase illicit substances from Zach, having no prior knowledge or involvement in the heinous crime. Amidst this confusing array of contradictory testimonies, a new witness appeared unexpectedly. A woman approached authorities with a disturbing account of her own. She explained she previously had a relationship with a man named Jeffrey, who had once shown her a disturbing video depicting a violent assault on a young woman. Jeffrey had chillingly revealed to her that the victim in this disturbing recording was Holly Bobo, and the man perpetrating this heinous act was allegedly Zach. Jeffrey's revelation struck her as genuine, as he had specifically named Holly and described unsettling details of the crime, including explicit references to the involvement of Zach. Recognizing this as potentially crucial evidence, detectives swiftly acted upon her testimony. They arrested Jeffrey and another individual closely connected to him for questioning. Both vehemently denied any involvement in Holly's disappearance and claimed to have no knowledge of the video. Police quickly confronted Jeffrey with a recorded conversation between himself and the woman, where he explicitly acknowledged the existence of the video and its horrifying content. When presented with this undeniable evidence, Jeffrey began shifting his explanation, suggesting there had been a misunderstanding due to confusion arising from personal circumstances. He suggested his ex-wife was coincidentally also named Holly, claiming this might have caused confusion during their conversation. While these attempts to confirm Jeffrey's involvement were underway, detectives continued exploring alternative avenues to link their primary suspects conclusively. They diligently pursued leads, hoping to find tangible evidence or compelling testimony against Zach and those connected to him. In doing so, they uncovered another significant lead: a local resident named Shane, who had suspiciously frequent contact with Zach on the day Holly disappeared. Suspecting Shane might have assisted Zach, perhaps even in the grim aftermath of the crime, authorities promptly interrogated him. During his interrogation, Shane became increasingly anxious under intense questioning. Investigators speculated openly that Shane might have aided Zach in disposing of Holly's body, making him a critical figure in unraveling the case. Detectives sought to exploit Shane's apparent fear and discomfort, pressing him relentlessly for truthful answers. Although Shane initially resisted, he gradually provided valuable information. Nevertheless, he fell short of a complete confession or confirmation of his involvement, leaving detectives frustrated yet hopeful. Just when the investigation appeared stalled yet again, an unforeseen development reignited hope. In September 2014, a group of hunters traversing a remote forested area approximately 19 miles from Holly's family home stumbled upon a shocking discovery. Hidden deep within dense brush, they uncovered a large, oddly positioned bucket partially concealed beneath thick foliage. Curious and uneasy, one of the hunters cautiously approached the object. Upon closer inspection, he realized with horror that the bucket contained terrible evidence, immediately prompting them to contact authorities. Police responded swiftly, securing the scene and collecting the remains for forensic analysis. Through meticulous examination, dental records conclusively identified the victim as Holly Bobo. Tragically, the remains had been in the forest for approximately 3 years, severely limiting investigators' ability to gather detailed forensic evidence. Despite these obstacles, forensic specialists managed to uncover a chilling detail. The discovery of Holly's remains galvanized the entire community, reigniting a powerful collective desire for justice and closure. Detectives, recognizing the gravity and complexity of the situation, revisited their extensive notes and interrogations. Soon after, Jason unexpectedly emerged as a key witness willing to cooperate. Under pressure, Jason admitted to detectives that he had indeed been at Zach's residence on the day of Holly's abduction, not for casual reasons, but specifically to purchase illegal substances. His account provided another crucial puzzle piece in the grim narrative that investigators painstakingly assembled. According to Jason's vivid and disturbing account, Zach candidly confessed to abducting Holly, with his brother Dylan and their mutual friend Shane actively participating in the crime. Upon entering Zach's home, Jason found himself confronted by a scene he had never imagined witnessing. The chilling image instantly burned itself into Jason's memory, forever marking that tragic day. Zach, visibly agitated but determined, asked Jason directly for his assistance in disposing of the evidence, expressing urgency in removing any evidence that could link him to the crime. After a brief hesitation, Jason agreed, driven by a sense of fearful complicity and perhaps a misguided sense of loyalty. In a surreal haze, Jason described watching Shane methodically burning Holly's personal items, clothing, identification cards, and other personal effects, in a rusted metal barrel in the backyard. Thick black smoke filled the air, leaving a dark symbolic stain on the afternoon sky. As they stood in anxious indecision, Zach abruptly made the final decision to dispose of evidence in the deep waters below. But before they could carry out their grim plan, they grew fearful of drawing attention. At this critical moment, Zach changed his mind, deciding instead to conceal evidence elsewhere, somewhere more discreet. Jason later recalled Zach's sudden, agitated demeanor as he struggled with the dilemma. With tension palpable in every action, Zach hastily ordered Jason back into the vehicle, and they sped away from the river without executing their initial plan. Several days later, Zach cryptically revealed to Jason that he'd ultimately hidden evidence deep within a secluded area of dense woodland. However, when Jason relayed this information to investigators, it became clear that Zach had either lied or deliberately provided a false location to mislead authorities. Holly's remains were later discovered in an entirely different wooded area, suggesting Zach's attempt at deception. Jason's testimony also presented investigators with troubling inconsistencies regarding the initial abduction scenario. Jason described a narrative wherein Zach, Dylan, and Shane had initially planned to confront Holly's brother at his home under. According to Jason's account, Zach intended to involve Holly's brother in manufacturing illegal substances. However, Holly's brother adamantly denied any interest or involvement in such illegal activities, affirming he'd never associated himself with these suspects. Furthermore, When recalling the morning of Holly's abduction, he maintained that he had only witnessed one person leading Holly away, someone whose description clearly matched Shane rather than Zach or Dylan. This critical discrepancy left detectives puzzled about the accuracy and reliability of Jason's version of events. The investigation further intensified when a local woman unexpectedly came forward, presenting detectives with alarming new evidence. She recounted living with a man named Jeffrey, who had one day ominously shown her a disturbing video clip depicting the assault of a young woman. Jeffrey chillingly identified the victim as Holly and confidently pointed out Zach as the perpetrator, claiming the video had been secretly recorded by Zach himself, as assisted by Jeffrey. Shocked and alarmed by this revelation, the woman willingly provided testimony that opened yet another path of inquiry. Detectives swiftly acted upon her statement, promptly arresting Jeffrey and another closely associated individual. Under intense questioning, both men steadfastly denied any involvement or knowledge of the disturbing video and Holly's abduction. Authorities challenged Jeffrey's denials with recorded evidence from his conversation with the woman. Jeffrey, confronted with his earlier statements, suddenly became evasive, suggesting he might have misunderstood the context of her questions. Further complicating matters, Jeffrey introduced the notion of mistaken identity, asserting that his ex-wife coincidentally shared Holly's name, creating doubt and confusion about the legitimacy of the video. As investigators desperately sought concrete evidence, they painstakingly assembled circumstantial proof implicating Zach and his associates. Numerous neighbors provided critical testimonies, describing a white pickup truck speeding away from Holly's property shortly after her disappearance, a truck identical to the one Zach owned. Surveillance footage from local businesses and nearby roads reinforced eyewitness accounts, clearly identifying Zach's distinctive white truck in proximity to Holly's home around the time she vanished. Adding further credence to Zach's involvement, his ex-girlfriend bravely disclosed to detectives that Zach openly admitted his involvement in Holly's tragic fate. Another chilling piece of evidence emerged when a local resident came forward to describe an illicit exchange. The man accepted the weapon, but fearing association with the crime, discarded it into a nearby river. Authorities later successfully recovered the weapon, confirming its connection, although direct forensic links to Holly could not be definitively established. While detectives meticulously pieced together this convoluted web of deceit, another tragic twist abruptly impacted their investigation. Shane Austin, burdened by intense scrutiny and the overwhelming stress of potentially facing severe punishment, was discovered in a local hotel room. His attorney publicly criticized the investigation, accusing detectives of overly aggressive interrogation tactics, claiming that their pressure had directly led to Shane's tragic decision. Finally, the suspects' cases proceeded to individual trials, beginning prominently with Zachary Adams' trial in September 2017, 6 harrowing years after Holly's abduction. Facing intense public scrutiny, Zach pled not guilty. Despite his protestations, Jason Autry's dramatic courtroom testimony vividly recounted his own horrifying experiences on the day Holly disappeared, significantly influencing the proceedings. Faced with mounting evidence and powerful eyewitness accounts, Zachary Adams was ultimately convicted. Subsequently, Dylan Adams, recognizing the overwhelming evidence mounting against him, opted for a plea deal, admitting his partial involvement in the terrible events surrounding Holly's abduction and tragic death. By doing so, Dylan Adams hoped to avoid the full severity of punishment that a prolonged trial would have inevitably entailed. Though Dylan's plea deal did not explicitly require him to testify against his accomplices or provide specific details of the events, it effectively bound him to a narrative that the prosecution could present at trial. Consequently, Dylan was spared a harsher sentence but still admitted his complicity, casting him as an accessory in the tragic events surrounding Holly's disappearance and death. Jason Autry's situation, however, differed greatly. His initial cooperation was vital to the prosecution's case, but troubling questions soon surfaced about the truthfulness and consistency of his statements. Jason Autry initially portrayed himself as a reluctant participant, forced into assisting Zachary Adams after the crime had already occurred. Due to his cooperation, he was initially given leniency, a lesser sentence in exchange for his crucial testimony. Despite the authorities' earlier reliance on Jason Autry's statements, his narrative raised troubling contradictions, fueling public skepticism and debate. The prosecution found itself facing critical scrutiny over the lack of solid forensic evidence directly connecting the accused men to Holly's tragic abduction and death. No fingerprints, DNA traces, fibers, or any other conclusive physical evidence linking Holly to Zachary Adams' car or residence were ever uncovered, despite exhaustive forensic examinations. This glaring absence of direct evidence formed the cornerstone of the defense's argument, leading many in the community to wonder about the reliability of the prosecution's entire narrative. Furthermore, the suspects' families passionately defended their innocence, claiming that investigators had aggressively constructed a false narrative, effectively coercing Dylan Adams and Jason Autry into giving unreliable testimonies under immense pressure. Dylan Adams and Jason Autry accounts notably conflicted, fueling further suspicion about the investigation's thoroughness and integrity. Dylan Adams consistently asserted he never participated directly in the abduction Holly, maintaining his presence was purely coincidental. Contrarily, Jason implicated Dylan significantly, alleging active involvement, a contradiction that severely weakened the credibility of their testimonies. A significant inconsistency further complicated matter. Initially, Holly's brother had clearly described seeing a man leading Holly into the woods, a description distinctly fitting Shane Austin's appearance rather than Zach's or Dylan's. This discrepancy raised additional doubts about Jason's narrative. While Jason mentioned Zach, Dylan, and Shane collectively taking Holly away, Holly's brother steadfastly maintained his statement that only one individual, most closely resembling Shane Austin, had been with Holly. This discrepancy profoundly impacted public perception, causing widespread confusion about what truly happened. Ultimately, the trials proceeded under tremendous public pressure and intense media scrutiny. Zachary Adams was convicted and sentenced to life imprisonment without parole, plus additional sentences for kidnapping and assault, despite the largely circumstantial nature of the evidence. Dylan Adams was sentenced to 35 years in prison.